It started with a book, an ancient, weathered tome with no return address that arrived on my doorstep one dreary morning. I should have known then that nothing good could come from those yellowed pages bound in cracked leather, but curiosity got the better of me. It always does. I had lived alone in my cramped, one-bedroom apartment for the past 3 years. My social life had whittled down to the occasional text from my mother and video chats with my sister who had moved across the country. I was a recluse, not by choice but by disposition. Something about being around others drained me, so I gradually shut myself away, immersing myself in books and documentaries until the outside world became little more than background noise. So when I pried open the parcel and discovered the book inside, a thrill ran through me. It was ancient, the musty scent and faded ink attested to that. Strange symbols marked the cover, and the pages felt heavy in my hand. I flipped through them eagerly, though I couldn't decipher the language. It seemed to be Latin, but not quite. Hearing nothing but the hum of the refrigerator in my quiet apartment, I whispered a few words under my breath just to hear myself speak. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The lights flickered and dimmed. A cold chill swept through the room. The TV switched on, blank and buzzing, despite being unplugged. I slammed the book shut, heart hammering against my ribs. When I tentatively opened it again, the words seemed to swirl and shift on the page. Fear sank its talons into my gut. Whatever dark power dwelled in this book, I had awakened it with my foolish dabbling. I researched the strange tome, digging through occult websites and reference texts. Buried among apocryphal ramblings and conspiracy theories, I discovered references to a book called the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. It contained ancient spells and rituals for summoning sinister forces. The book that arrived on my doorstep seemed cut from the same cloth. As I read further about demonic possession, unease churned within me. Shadows danced at the corner of my eye, seeming to scurry away when I turned. I tossed and turned through uneasy nights filled with vivid nightmares. Voices, whispers and wails, filtered through the empty rooms. Desperate, I sought help from Father Andrews, the local parish priest. He was elderly, his bald head liver-spotted and his blue eyes clouded with cataracts. But his wrinkled face still radiated warmth and compassion. I sat in his musty office explaining what had happened, my knee jittering with anxiety. He listened patiently, brow furrowed with concern. In the end, he made the sign of the cross over me and advised me to keep praying, but he could not offer the help I truly needed. The die had been cast once I read those accursed words. I considered throwing the book away or even burning it, but some instinct told me that would do no good. The evil I had awakened did not reside solely within those pages, it had already started worming its tendrils into my mind. So I did the only thing I could do, I shut myself away and tried to shut the demon out. But it was patient and cunning. At first it only taunted me in the shadows, a creeping chill that raised goosebumps on my arms, a blur of darkness when I turned my head too quickly. But soon it grew bolder. I would experience periods of missing time, hours wiped from memory during which I had apparently carried on normally. But I'd awake covered in scratches and bruises, a rusty flavor coating my tongue. A feeling of a malevolent presence lingered at the edge of my periphery, something ancient and sadistic. I feared what atrocities I was committing while under its control. I changed the locks on my doors and nailed my windows shut, silencing the outside world. I lived in near darkness, the barest sliver of light creeping through the blackout curtains. But no matter what I did, I could not shut out the demon that had wormed its way inside me. It delighted in tormenting me. When I finally slept, it plagued me with visions of mutilated bodies, endless pits of fire, warped creatures with dripping fangs that chased me through primordial forests. I'd jerk awake drenched in sweat, wheezing, while a chorus of maniacal laughter echoed all around. During my waking hours, the attacks were more insidious. A wonderful aroma would draw me to the kitchen where I'd find a feast laid out. But when I reached eagerly for a tasty morsel, it dissolved into a seething mass of maggots in my hand. Shadowy figures lurked at the end of hallways, dissipating into smoke when I approached. Phantom hands grabbed at my ankles as I climbed the stairs. The nights were the worst. That's when the demon's sadistic nature was unleashed. It would claw at the walls, the scratching growing louder and louder until I retreated to the corner in a whimpering ball, hands clamped over my ears. It choked me in my sleep, squeezed my chest so hard I'd awake already turning blue. It would slam doors over and over until I thought my mind would shatter. My tenuous grasp on sanity was slipping. I stopped bathing. I barely ate. I could not remember the last time I had left the apartment. I was a shut-in, but now my prison was not one of my own making, but constructed by the demon's cruel torments. In desperation, I even reached out to my ex-girlfriend Claire. She was the last person I dated before becoming a recluse. Even during our relationship, she had expressed frustration with my lack of ambition and my tendency to withdraw from the world. An icy pragmatist, she doubted my claims about the demonic entity haunting me. Over coffee in a quiet corner of the local diner, she scolded me for spinning wild tales and advised me to check myself into a psychiatric ward. Even as I protested, I knew she thought me insane already. My friend Mark proved more sympathetic. A portly, rumpled man with kind eyes and a messy mop of black hair, he had always accepted me, idiosyncrasies and all. But even his patience wore thin as I described the demon's relentless attacks. He would visit often, bringing bags of groceries when it seemed I hadn't eaten in days, shaking me out of my dazed trances when I sat staring into nothingness for hours on end. But in the end, even he threw his hands up in frustration. "I want to help you, man," he said, his eyes dark with worry as he lingered in my doorway. Behind him, I could see an inky shadow unfurl like a pair of wings. "But whatever's going on, it's beyond me. You need help, real help." I could not blame him. I knew he spoke the truth. The doctors could medicate me, restrain me, lock me away. But no straitjacket could contain the pure evil that festered inside me. In a moment of desperation, I turned to Father Andrews once again. I sat hunched in the confessional, the words pouring out of me, the fear, the isolation, the losing stretches of time, the twisted visions that felt far too real. Finally, I admitted the truth. This was no mere demon, but a primal evil that had existed before time itself. It was older than the ages, and it had staked its claim on my soul. Father Andrews listened, his eyes closed, his wrinkled face creased in an expression of sorrow. "This entity you describe is beyond my powers," he said softly, making the sign of the cross over me. "I can only give you this advice: flee from evil, hold fast to good. Your soul still knows the light, even if you cannot see it now. Trust in your Lord, and deliver yourself from this darkness." I wanted to believe his platitudes, desperately I did. But upon leaving the church, the festering rancor in my mind grew deafening. I doubled over, vomiting on the steps as a wave of foul blasphemies rose within me, dripping from my tongue until I choked them down, trembling. This cursed entity entwined itself into my very marrow. I could no more excise it than cut out my own heart and live. No, the professor was wrong. This was my cross to bear, alone. I drove home enveloped in a cocoon of unearthly whispers, the demonic presence coiled inside me like a fetid parasite. Once home, I took the ancient book, the catalyst of this whole ordeal, and turned it over in my hands. I considered casting it into the fireplace and watching it burn, but I knew that would only please the demon, not dispel it. No, There was only one way to end this. I carefully wrapped the book, then dressed myself in a casual button-down shirt and jeans. I was beyond ratty sweatpants and unwashed hair. Methodically, I emptied the remaining cans of gasoline in the garage into my car, then placed the book reverently on the passenger seat. I drove for hours, seeking an isolated spot where my final act would go unwitnessed. As I passed boarded-up warehouses and decaying factories, the demon railed inside me, thrashing and spewing blasphemies. It pounded against my skull, bloomed bursts of pain behind my eyes, but I kept driving, hands clenched on the wheel. Finally, I reached my destination, a deserted industrial road, weeds poking up through cracked pavement. Bright moonlight glinted off broken bottles and debris, remnants of a civilization long abandoned. The demon wailed one final time as I parked and carefully arranged the book on an old wooden crate. Striking a match, I lit the book. Flames licked greedily at the dry pages. The inferno reflected in my eyes as I soaked my clothing with the last of the gasoline. The book sizzled, popping and cracking as foul smoke rose into the sky. This was it. The demon would haunt me no more. I would make sure of it. As I stepped into the roaring flames, a scream of inhuman rage shook the night air. The heat seared away lies and shadows, reducing everything to purified ash. I thought of Father Andrews, of Mark, even Claire. Despite leaving me to face this burden alone, maybe they had done the right thing. Maybe normal fires could not destroy such an ancient evil, one that predated humanity itself. No, only the flames of sacrifice had any chance of banishing this unearthly scourge from our world. And so I gave myself to the fire willingly, feeling the demon's grasp on my soul finally break amid its panicked shrieks. As the flames engulfed the book and my bones blackened within it, a sense of peace settled upon my charring heart. I was free, at last. We were both free. The moon shone serenely on the smoking wreckage, pure and unsullied in a way I would never know again. But though this evil had burned me away to nothing, maybe my tortured soul could finally rest.